of all, welcome to the First Shield Financial Podcast. Today we have a gentleman that is, I'm going to say world renowned in the world of the real estate business. Mike Moschert from our team introduced us, and he just told me that I'm going to learn a tremendous amount of stuff about you today. So I'd like to let our world, our audience know, welcome to our podcast, Mr. Jay Redding.
Well, thank you so much, Jerry. I'm just going to tell you, Mike embellishes just a little bit, okay? So,
I trust the guy.
He's a good man. I'm not saying that, but I think he's blowing a little wind up your skirt there, or just a little.
I hear you.
Oh, it's a privilege to be on your podcast. So thank you so much for the invitation. I appreciate that, and I hope I'm able to share some things that will, help your people who watch this to help move their business along. So I hope that we can accomplish that.
I'm sure we will. I've heard a lot about you. I know that you have done some really amazing things in the investment world. Notes, real estate, rentals, fix and flips. You're known as a coach, a mentor, speaker, investor, all of those kinds of things. And I know we don't have a lot of time, but I'm going to try to steal as much of that information from you today as I possibly can.
Okay.
So first thing, how did you get started in real estate?
Oh, wow. Okay. I did my first deal back in 2004. In a previous life, I was a pharmaceutical sales rep. I sold drugs legally. All right. So
I'm glad you kind of filled that in, because there are a lot of folks they're drug
okay.
reps.
And before that, I was a track and field coach. I was a Division I track and field coach, and I grew up on a farm, on a 200-acre farm. So I'm just a country kid at heart. So,
Okay.
Always
in Indiana?
I grew up in Indiana. We're back in Indiana now. I lived over in Ohio for a while. So when I was coaching, I was assistant track and field coach over at Kent State University for a number of years. So
really,
yeah, I was. So
I grew up in Akron and went to the University of Akron.
Oh my gosh, no, I did not know that. Well, you know where Brimfield, Ohio is.
Yeah.
I lived in Brimfield, in that small little burg.
Wow.
That's way back.
Yeah, a lot of folks are going to be on this podcast going, "Who are those guys?
Who are these two?" Wow, that's a small world. That really is.
Tiny world.
Yeah. So, all right. So I did my first deal in 2004. I was doing some real estate while I was still in the pharmaceutical sales. In 2006, I kind of got caught in some of the downsizing that was taking place in the pharmaceutical industry, and just made a decision. I mean, we maybe had 7 or 8 rentals at that point in time, and you know what? I was 45 years old, and it's like, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it now. And my wife and I basically sat down. She was a school teacher, and we ratcheted down big time. We lived off of her income, and I focused totally on developing the real estate.
Okay.
And so I went full time in 2007 and never looked back. That's basically it. We've done. We have 40 rentals right now, all within 30 minutes of our office, designed specifically that way.
Okay.
We've done 100 fix and flips, rehabs, all that type of stuff. I probably have wholesale 30, 40 houses when I was first getting started and absolutely hated it. Okay. Nothing against you wholesalers out there. It's fine. It's just not what I want. I like doing stuff once and it be done for years. That's what I like doing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
wholesaling is like a very hard job.
Yeah, I mean it is a job. There's no question about it. So, and then we've purchased a number of tax liens over the years as well. I've done some private lending for some guys here locally that I trust. That we're both experienced. I know they're going to perform. I know that what they're doing. we've been
Okay.
doing a reasonable amount of transactional funding for some of the wholesalers. So I don't want to get the wholesalers mad at me. Okay, so I'm just saying. So if they're if they're making a larger amount on their wholesale deal than what they want the end buyer to see, then we can come in and provide the transactional funding for about 48 hours for them to close the deal, so it's a double close. So
Got it.
we do that. And
Okay.
then in 2019, we got involved. We started really looking at notes. It's a family-run business. It's my son-in-law and I.
Okay.
My son-in-law Kyle Cassidy. Therefore, that's our Cassidy Investments.
Got it.
I'm at that stage where we're starting to look at what's the transition look like into the next generation. I have one child. I have a daughter. He married her, so you know where everything's going. Okay.
Yeah. Understood.
And he, for some reason, doesn't want to manage rentals for the rest of his life. I don't know why, but
I don't know. Is it something to do with those T's? Like
yes, something like that. Yeah.
T's, something like that. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So he's actually the one that got us kind of looking at notes, and he basically said that I think I have an interest more in this area, and I said, okay, well then let's go search this out. Let's see who's the players out here who have done it for a long time, not just saying who's the quote unquote gurus, but I mean who's been doing it for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And basically our mentors have been Eddie Speed, all right,
Yep.
with Note School.
Eddie
We're
Rock.
titanium. Yep. We're titanium members of that, and then also Fred and Tracy Rui. Okay. We are part of their group as well. All of them have 30 years of experience. They've been through ups and downs, through multiple cycles, and have been successful and have demonstrated the test of time, which I think is really important when you're really looking to learn from someone.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's how we got started in Notes. It took us a couple years to learn, kind of figure out what fits our model as far as what we need, and because there's so many different ways, as you all know, there's so many different ways that you can go with Notes, and so we just basically, our primary model right now is that we're buying fulls and we're buying partials, and then we're hypothecating out is what we're basically doing with those with our private capital.
So you're doing everything, soup to nuts.
Well, when I say not really everything, I mean, we're not really doing the fix and flips. We continue to do the rentals, but we're in a transition right now. We're starting to move some of our rentals off to professional property management as our note business continues to grow. Kyle wants to move all that off. I'm okay with that as well. Okay, but we just have to balance that up as we're growing on one side versus, as we, because obviously as you move it off to professional management, your cash flow is going to reduce some.
Yeah.
And fortunately, we don't have much debt on our rental portfolio, so it cash flows well. So we just have to be careful that we do that in a timely fashion. So as a balancing act.
Got it. That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Wow. So 2019 is when we went through the training, and really in the last couple years, I mean, we bought a few notes. I've done a bunch of stuff on my IRAs as well, self-directed IRAs, fix and flips, tax liens, all that type of stuff as well. And now I've pretty much divested everything, and we just have notes in my self-directed IRA. So
that sounds very familiar.
yeah, I gotta say that's so much easier. So really in the last 2 years, we have really pushed hard and focused totally on expanding and growing our note business is what it is. And Kyle runs all the systems and processes on the back end. I find the deals, we evaluate together, and then I'm basically the front end. I find the deals, and we balance the deals and the capital. That's what we basically do, and he runs everything else on the backside. Is what he does. But we do not buy a note unless we both are in agreement. So we review together and make the final decision together.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Are you buying primarily in the Midwest, or are you all over the country?
We are in 8 states primarily, not against other places. Okay. We're in Indiana, Michigan, North, South Carolina, Alabama, Tennessee, Missouri, and Texas. That's where we're at. And that's primarily due to favorable foreclosure laws.
Yes.
More favorable, I should say. Not opposed to some other states, but right now we just haven't felt the need that we've needed to go beyond that. And we typically don't go into another state until we've already done the research on the foreclosure laws and we already have interviewed attorneys to know if we need to go that route, who we're going to go to, and we kind of bounce that off of people that's in our network of who they've used, that type of thing, and make sure we have a relationship already established if we need to go that way.
Yeah, that's a very interesting approach. It's we have tended to go into markets. We buy in pretty much the same markets that you do, but in and other states.
Sure.
And then after the fact, we start worrying about, well, where are we going to find a lawyer?
Well, I have a New York. I am in some other states. I do have an Ohio note. I do have a New York note. Fortunately, those have both been paying perfectly, so that's good.
Yeah. I don't do New York. I don't do New Jersey, Massachusetts, California.
I just don't do the Northeast, and I don't do California. So definitely.
Gotcha.
So I'm with you there.
So one of the things that you mentioned, and I know when I started, I was buying out of my solo 401k.
Sure.
After a while, I realized that I saw more notes than I had capital for.
Sure.
So I assume that you've gone through the same process. What are you doing for capital raise?
Sure. We have raised our capital primarily one-on-one, friends, family, and associates. That's basically what we've done.
Okay.
I just made a phone call with some guys that I haven't talked to in probably 10, 15 years, and we just, we caught up on stuff, and I say, hey, I'm calling for two reasons. All right, we're growing. They're aware of what I do. I said, we're growing, and I wanted just to reach out to you and see if you're open to investing in anything alternative investments outside of stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. And if you are, great. And if you aren't, it's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
And so I just throw it out there, and it's like, hey, are you interested? And if not, we'll share with you what we're doing. If it's a fit, great. And if it's not a fit, it's fine.
Yeah, no harm, no foul.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so cool. It's not for everyone by any means, but I would be hard pressed for you to find a better return in a fixed rate income asset than what we're doing. You would agree with that? Yeah, that's collateralized with at least a 30% equity position over the top. Yeah. There's nothing that's guaranteed. We don't ever say that. We're nothing guaranteed, but it's pretty doggone well secured.
Yeah. And I like that that conversation. And I have it frequently. It's not guaranteed, but here are all of the belts and suspenders that we have on this thing to make sure that it's gonna pay off for us.
Yeah. And the question always comes up, well, what if they stop paying? Okay, why don't they stop paying?
Yeah.
Well, what if they do? We have the collateral. We have the legal rights to the collateral. Now, that's the last step that we'll go to. There's a lot of different things that you can do. All right. And we buy most of the stuff we're buying is at 50, 60%. So we're well underneath the 70%. And if you've held the note for any length of time, I mean, you're going to be under 50% in a relatively short period of time, particularly when we're buying partials. Okay.
Yeah.
And it's like, we're in the first lien position. You may not be able to, it may stop the cash flow for a little bit, but your money is really secured. We just need to take, your interest continues to accrue. And when it goes through the foreclosure process, if we have to go that far and it sells at the sheriff's sale, then, all right, you'll be paid out all at one shot at that point.
Okay. That sounds good.
Yeah.
You mentioned partials, and I recently started doing partials, and I've described it as the greatest invention of man since fire. So,
that's pretty good.
It's like, this can't be real. So talk to me a little bit about partials. Why did you start doing partials other than, Eddie kind of influenced you?
Well, yeah, Eddie didn't kind of. He absolutely did influence me. No question about that. For people who may not know, a partial is nothing more than that we are buying how we do it. All right, there's different ways it can be done, but how we do it, we buy a certain number of payments for a certain amount of money. We buy the full payment. All right,
Yes.
we're not splitting the payments and getting into SEC concerns or anything like that. So we don't fractionalize a note at all. So when we buy a partial, there is a full collateral assignment of that note over to us. So we now own the note for that period of time. Say we buy 100 payments. All right. For the next 100 payments, we get the full payment for each one of those. And then at the 101st payment, all right, that note reverts back to the person that we purchased it from. And they own it from that point forward. So we're kind of we're kind of getting the front end to the middle of the note, which is mostly interest in that point.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then we go one step farther after that. We buy the partial, and then we turn around and hypothecate that, which is nothing more than a fancy word for we pledge that performing note as collateral for the loan that we're taking from our private capital partner.
So you've found out something that's even better than fire.
So I don't know about that. All right. So say we pay, we're going to use this as an example. Say we pay our capital partner at 7 or 8%. Okay. And we are purchasing that partial at a discount so that we're earning a 13 or 14% yield.
Yes.
All right. We take the spread.
Yeah.
We take the spread and have no money in the deal, or have very little money, I should say. We keep a little bit in there, but after 1 or 2 payments, our money's all back to us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you can turn around and use that money and do it again. Just keep doing it.
Yeah. So we use our capital to buy the notes. We get them boarded. We wait till at least a payment comes in. Okay, one payment comes in, and then we will go ahead and do the hypothecation model at that point. So if we buy, say we buy 100 payments for, I'm just using this as an example, say for 50,000. All right, I don't know if those numbers work or not. I'm just using those as numbers. Okay.
Yeah.
For 50,000, all right, we'll probably leave $1,000 in it. We'll borrow 49.
Okay.
And how we basically do it is, say there's 100 payments left, that 49,000 that we borrow, we're borrowing the full 49, and it's being amortized over the full partial that we have purchased.
Yes.
All right. But we balloon it out at 5 years. So what we basically do, we go 60 months at a time.
Okay.
All right, with our private, with our capital partner. So we go 60 months at a time. At the end of the 60 months, if they want to go another 60 months, all right, or in this case, if there's 100 payments, there's only another 40 payments left. All right, so if they want to go another 40 payments, all we got to do is write a one-page document that says all the terms of previously agreed upon. We just extend for an additional 40 months. Okay.
Got it.
If they want to balloon out in the documents, we have exactly what that balloon payment is at that time, and we pay them out at that point. That's what we do.
Okay. All right, that sounds good. That sounds good.
So most private investors can't see beyond 5 years. They don't want to. They don't feel comfortable. I'm sure you've run into this. They don't feel comfortable being tied up for 10 years. Okay.
Yeah.
Mainly because of the uncertainty in the market. They just don't know there may be a need or something. But most people feel comfortable for 60 months, 5 years. All right.
Yeah.
So
and that's kind of the numbers that we use as well. 60 months works. It's not too long, not too short.
Exactly.
Wow.
And now we make it totally passive for our capital partners. All right, we're the ones that's dealing with the servicing companies. All of we do not service any of our loans. They're all placed with servicing companies. Okay. Servicing company pays our company. All right, and then we turn around and pay our private capital. That's what we do.
Okay.
We keep at least 1 month's worth of whatever our gross inflow is from our notes, whatever the schedule. We keep that always in our accounts, fluid at all times. Actually, we do about a month and a half is what we do.
Okay.
Because not everyone pays right when they're supposed to, do they, Jerry?
Yeah, yeah. I wish.
I would, yeah. All right.
I've had borrowers say, "Well, I've never been late," and it's like, "Well, your definition of late is in the month."
In the month, yeah. Well, I'll be honest, from our standpoint, when we're looking at stuff, if they pay within the month, that's on time. As far as they'll pay in a late fee, but I
Yeah,
mean, we're okay
yeah,
with that. All
yeah,
right.
yeah.
So we always keep that liquidity there. So we pay out all of our private capital. They receive their money by the 15th of the month. Okay.
Okay.
And I've been using private capital ever since I started, because when I started on the real estate side, once I got downsized, I wasn't bankable at that point then. So I had to
Yeah,
go out and raise private capital at that point if I wanted to do it. And we
yeah.
just kind of fell into that model of the 60-month term,
Okay,
and we've just moved that over to the note side is what we basically have done.
okay. All right, that makes sense. That makes sense.
So
One other quick question for you on partials. What's your
sure.
criteria for a partial?
Well, I'll tell you how we do it. We have been, we had talked before we got going here. We've been working with some wholesalers, house buyers, however you want to classify them. All right,
Yep.
who are basically selling to the Latino community. Not
Hmm.
all to Latino, but that's kind of been their focus.
Hmm.
And we do this model both on fulls as well as partials, okay, on what we were just talking about, how we hypothecate
Hmm.
out, etc. Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
but getting into the partials and working with house buyers. In working with house buyers, you got to work with people who have a good reputation. They've been doing it for a while, and they actually have some volume, not one or two, or they wholesale a couple deals. I mean, we're looking with people who are players. All right,
Yeah, yeah.
and what we essentially do, the houses that they're basically buying and wholesaling out, they're wholesaling out and offering financing to other investors. So it's an investor to investor loan. So we're not concerned about Dodd-Frank. Okay, that's the first thing.
Okay.
A little bit higher interest rates.
Yep,
Okay, these
yep.
interest rates are anywhere from 11 to 13%. Okay,
Wow. Okay.
so it's investor to investor. Um, Big down payments. All right, from the investor, from the end buyer,
Okay.
15 to 25% of the purchase price.
Okay.
And the condition of the home has to be livable, number one, and it has to be light rehab. When I say light rehab, that's basically someone that has no skills. What could they come in and do? All right, which
Maybe
is
pay.
basically paint and carpet, basically, and maybe some minor fix up as far as a screen door pull, very
Yeah,
minor type of things. All
yeah,
right.
yeah,
It may not be updated. Okay.
yeah,
So it may not have the vinyl plank floors or, the new things. All right.
yeah.
But it's livable, it's safe, and it's secure. That type of thing.
Okay.
All right. It works best with certainly light rehab. Well, they are selling them on terms to the investor with short-term financing. Now, when I say short-term, I'm talking 120 to 180 months typically, maybe out to 240. All right.
Okay. Okay.
So they're big payments, high
Yeah.
interest rate, shorter term.
Yes.
What don't
Okay.
you like about that?
I love it.
Okay.
Yeah, love it.
So
Okay.
so they're getting, say they're getting 20% down, the wholesaler is. We want them to collect at least 6 to 8 payments. I would feel best with a year's worth, but with a large down payment, if it's a larger down payment, we'll go a little less than that.
Okay.
They have it set up on ACH, so it's an automatic pull every
Mhm.
month.
Yep.
All right, and we ideally want taxes and insurance escrow. Now, initially when we started working, they didn't do that, and we're now finally getting to that. Okay,
Okay.
they finally got taxes escrow, and then they weren't doing the insurance. And you got to get both of them in there. So
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
getting there. All right.
Okay.
So what we do then, you know, so they've got a big chunk up front. They've got, these payments are at least 1,000 a month. All right, and they've got 7, 8, 9 payments that's come in. So they've made 7, 8, 9 grand on top of that. on monthly payments, and then we let them tell us, what do you need out of it? Because some of them have private money that's involved. Okay, some of it's their own capital, and the goal is talking with the wholesalers. You got to get them buy in to be able to take a little less up front with the opportunity to be able to make a whole lot more on the back end.
Yeah.
All right. Because we'll take that middle chunk out to make them whole.
Yeah.
All right. If they have a private lender, to take that private lender out so they can go use that money and go do another deal.
Yeah. Yeah.
And all we do is ask, okay, you tell us roughly how much you need out of it, then we'll back into it as far as how many payments that makes, all right, for the yield that we need to have to be able to get our spread that we want. And we want to make between $200 and $300 a month, all right, on the spread is what we basically are looking at. Okay. So we back into the number of payments.
Wow.
All right. And then basically what we do, it ends up that, when it comes back to the person that's selling the loan to us, when it comes back to them, they may have 30 or 40 payments left on the back end. If they're willing to take 90% of what they would typically get up front, they'll make another 20, 30, 40,000 on the back end that they would never have had.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the only thing that they're risking is that potential interest. Okay.
Yeah.
They're still due all of the principal that's part of the loan. They're not risking that at all.
No.
So the only way you're not going to get that interest is if the buyer ends up paying off early, and that happens sometimes. Okay.
Yeah. And if they pay off, everybody settles up with whatever portion of the principal they're due.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're taking a very minimal risk to be able to hit a home run at later on down the road. That's what you're really being able to do. Wow. And not every deal is going to fit this. I mean, we basically talk with people. Hey, if they're doing 3 or 4 or 5 wholesale deals a month, maybe 1 out of 5. All right. All right. So it may be 4 or 5 for a year, maybe a little higher depending on the volume that they're doing. Right. So we're not saying every deal needs to be this. You pick and choose. If you're doing 4 or 5 deals a month of wholesaling, there's probably at least 1 in there. Yeah. But the key becomes they've got to be all in at 70%. Yeah. That's the critical part.
Yeah.
If they're not buying right, and these big wholesalers, they know how to buy it right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. And working with some of the smaller groups that's younger, sometimes they push that margin. And it's like, okay, we can't get all of it out. All right. So you're either going to need to leave some of your own money in or bring a little bit of your own money out of the deal to get your private lender out, because we don't ever go above 70%. That's as high as we will go of the value of the property.
That makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. And that discipline is what keeps you in business.
It is, because
you're going to get in trouble.
Well, yeah, and the thing is that with us buying that partial, it reduces our risk. So now we're into the deal at about 60% usually, okay, which puts at least 30, 40. Even if we push to 70%, we've got a 30% equity over the top, and then it even gets better than that. And we've got large payments that amortize down, and it's a win-win.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I will. You've given me some thoughts and some ideas. These are things that I know hypothecations and I've used them. I know partials and I've used them. I've never thought to kind of combine them,
blend them together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one day Eddie will see this and he'll be going, Jerry, weren't you paying attention?
Well, I gotta say, I did not think of any of this myself. This is Eddie's teaching. I'm going to be honest, all right? This is not me. The only thing that we did is adjust a little bit for what our needs were. Eddie talks about leaving 4,000 or 5,000 into a deal. Well, we bootstrapped this company up from virtually nothing. It's like, okay, if we leave 5,000 in a deal, okay, that's about 4 or 5 deals, and then we're done for however long till we get it back. And it's like, that's not what we want to do. And I just got to think, well, why don't we just do what we did on the real estate side? It's the same exact model. It's just we're using our legal right to collect the debt as the collateral, all right, instead of the real estate. So the biggest challenge was finding an attorney that understood what we were doing and being able to get the documents written up so that it covers all the bases, all the different scenarios, and all the risks that can take place, all the disclosures, all that type of stuff that needs to take place.
Wow.
So,
after we get off of this video, I'm going to ask you for the name of that lawyer.
Oh, okay.
For those that are watching, knowing the right.
Don't reach out to me. I can't give that out. Okay, I'm gonna be honest with you. I can't.
Well, what I've learned in this business is having the right legal counsel that understands what we do is really critical.
It really is. Honestly, that was one of the biggest hurdles when we got started in notes. And fortunately, we found an attorney here locally for us who he does a lot of stuff on the real estate side. And we sat down with him and said, okay, this is what we're wanting to do. And he just giggled. He says, I haven't seen this since I got out of law school. He said, when I got out of law school, I worked for a bank. I said, I know exactly what you're talking about. They do it all the time. And I said, yes, they do, but nobody knows it. So he structured a lot of things for us. And actually, the contract that we initially had was written out of California, so we needed to have it reviewed for Indiana law for us here. But he was familiar with the concept and what we were doing and everything. He says, yeah, I'm comfortable with what you're doing. That's fine. So
well, that's good. That's very good.
He was invaluable, all right, for us in that respect.
Wow.
So now we got everything templated is what we basically have done.
Oh yeah. And I will be rewatching this because I'm going to be taking notes, and I'll be calling you, asking you for advice.
Well, now we do the same thing on whole notes as well. Okay. All right, if we buy that partial model, I really like because it fits a need that a lot of wholesalers don't understand. I mean, nothing against wholesalers, but many of them are basically like Pavlov's dog. All right, they're chasing, they're chasing the next, they're chasing where they get the next deal. All right, they're like salivating for where's the next deal. Well, there comes a point you're not going to be able to do that somewhere in your life, and you got to start thinking. You make some great cash flow, no question, but there comes a point in your life where you got to be thinking about, okay, I got to be putting some money back here long term for long-term wealth. And let's face it, rentals aren't cash flowing anyway like what they used to be. Okay, with the appreciation and the interest rates and all the cost of expenses and everything, this is the rentals just aren't quite as attractive as they once were at that point.
And your model where you put the money on the back side, that's like a retirement account for them.
Exactly.
Wow.
So
all right, cool. Well, Jay, this has been great. One of the other questions I was going to ask you was on the mortgage lending, but you even started answering all of that too. So I really appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
And, I'd like to have another conversation with you at another date where we can kind of go into some other aspects of what you're doing. Because I think, and Mike was right, what you're doing is fascinating, and for me, it's real educational.
Well, like I say,
with someone, and I get to learn a lot too. And that's what it's all about. So
I give credit to Eddie. Okay, I mean, all we basically did was just tweak this a little bit for our personal needs of what, my son-in-law likes to eat. So we needed some cash flow, okay, out of that. And the typical partial model is great for in a retirement account. All right, but you don't get monthly cash flow out of the partial. It's a great wealth developing tool. But cash flow, when you're trying to build out a business from scratch, you got to have some monthly cash flow in there to take care of bills, overhead, and eating money.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I, as another fellow entrepreneur, I understand.
Yeah.
All right. So Jay, thank you so much. We really appreciate it, and thank you for giving us the advice, the knowledge. And again, I'd like to get you back because there's just so much more that I want to learn and so much more I want to talk to you about.
Be happy to. So
All right.
not a problem at all. Certainly be happy to. Hopefully your audience finds this beneficial, and if they want to, if they want some learning materials and stuff like that, they can go to our website at CassidyInvestments.com. That's perfectly fine there. We have a lot of free information. It's very well, and I know that you do too on your
Yeah.
website. I went
Yeah.
and checked as well. So if people want to follow us in what we're doing, they can sign up for our quarterly newsletter.
Oh, very good. And how do
Okay.
they do that?
Pardon?
How do they sign up for the newsletter?
Just go to our website at CassidyInvestments.com.
Right.
We send out a quarterly newsletter just sharing what we're doing, what we've done in the last quarter, what we're looking at doing, where we're at in the market. We also host a Zoom call one time a month. We call it Note Talks with Kyle and Jay. And
Okay.
all we're basically, we talk all things notes. It's for an hour. You can get questions answered there. If you got a deal that you're looking at, you'd like to get a second opinion, we'll do that. But we typically always have something that we're working on at that point that we'll say, okay, so here's what we got. All right, here's what we're looking at. How would you value this? All right, what do you see wrong with this? We'll give you a part of the puzzle, but we won't give you the whole puzzle to
Okay.
get you to start asking some questions like, what do we know? What don't we know? What do we need to go find out? And then would you put this into your portfolio or would you not? If you'd put an offer in, what would it be? That type of stuff. That's what it
Okay.
is. Just it's kind of practice runs is what it is. And we just, excuse me, we make that available kind of as, I'll say our give back. It's not a training program or anything. We don't have a training program or anything like that. We just make it available, and hopefully you get better at determining notes, and somewhere down the road we hope we can do business together. That's
Right.
what we're basically doing.
That sounds good. And for our audience, you heard that. That's something that you want to participate in as well. And I know one day you're going to start seeing me on there too.
Yeah, well, we'll be happy to have you on there, Jerry. That's great.
Cool. Very good. Well, Jay, thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. You guys have a great day, and thank you so much.
All right, thanks.
Bye-bye.